Moscow arrests General Armagddon because of the Wagner uprising. Yevgeny Prigozhin tried to start a coup over the weekend. Sergei Surovikin, a Russian general, has apparently been arrested because he knew about it. The Defense Ministry hasn't said anything about the supposed arrest of General Armagddon, who hasn't been seen in public since last Saturday, when the Wagner chief started an armed uprising against Vladimir Putin. It looks like Surovikin joined Prigozhin's side during the uprising, a source told Moscow Times, and now they have him in their hands. In answer to the short-lived mutiny, the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, said that he was able to convince Putin not to wipe out the leader of the Wagner mercenaries. "I also knew that a brutal decision had been made to wipe out the rebels," he told Belarusian state media. This was the underlying message of Putin's speech. 12 people, including twin girls and a child, were killed when a supersonic Iskander missile fired by Russia hit a restaurant in the city of Kramatorsk. The missile hit the restaurant while it was full of people eating. Senior military officials have said that Kiev's troops are moving forward slowly but surely on the front lines in the east and southeast of Ukraine and around Bakhmut. General Valery Zaluzhny, the head of the Ukrainian military, told the top U.S. General Mark Milley that his troops had succeeded in seizing the strategic initiative and told him what guns and demining tools Kiev's troops needed. Ukraine's defense troops are continuing to attack, and we are making progress. The enemy is putting up a strong fight while taking a lot of damage, Zaluzhny wrote on Telegram. Oleksandr Reznikov, Ukraine's Minister of Defense, told the Financial Times that freeing a group of towns was not the main event of the attack. His assistant Hanna Malier told a national station that there were moves toward the seized cities of Berdyansk and Mariupol. She said, "Every day, there is an advance. Yes, progress is slow, but it is steady." She said that mopping up operations were done this week when the town of Rivnopol in the southeast was taken back. She also said that the army was now well entrenched and that the Russian military was sending troops to both Bakhmut and the southern front. She said they have moved their paratroopers and assault brigades to both the south and the east. They are bringing in their best reserves right now. Ukraine's rescue services say that one more body has been pulled from the rubble of a restaurant in Kramatorsk. This brings the death toll from a Russian missile strike to 12. The government said that 3 of the dead were children and that another 60 people were hurt. Denmark wants Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, and the Western Balkans to join the EU. However, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, the country's finance minister, said that geopolitical circumstances did not mean that government changes could be skipped. Rasmussen told the Financial Times that the EU risks importing instability if it lowers its standards for democracy and corruption in order to speed up the process of letting Ukraine and other potential countries join. When asked about Ukraine's participation in the EU, Mr. Rasmussen said that the EU shouldn't lower the bar but should instead help Ukraine by investing in it and giving it help so that it can meet the bloc's standards. This was carried by the FT. Even though Ukraine met 2 of the 7 requirements to start the process of joining the EU, an EU source who was aware with the bloc's suggestions to Ukraine told Reuters that the country still needed to make some important changes to its legal system. In 2019, the European Commission suggested changing the way new countries joined the EU so that current members could have more say. This was because countries like France and Denmark didn't want the EU to grow to include 6 Balkan countries. Mr. Rasmussen said that Denmark had changed its mind and was even open to changes inside the EU, such as more votes by majority, so that it could accept new members. Today, leaders from the EU will talk about the effects of the failed mutiny in Russia and promise more help for Ukraine in its war against Moscow's attack. At a meeting in Brussels, the leaders will also talk to Jens Stoltenberg, who is in charge of NATO, about what role the EU could play in the West's plans to make Ukraine safer. The Estonian Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas, said that the leaders would definitely talk about the Wagner military group's failed mutiny on Saturday, even though it is not on the summit's agenda or in the drafts of its written findings. It will definitely come up, she told reporters in Brussels the night before the two-day meeting. Ms. Kallas said that the West shouldn't be moved and should keep helping Ukraine and building up its own defenses. Charles Michel, who is the head of the EU leaders group called the European Council, said something similar. We will reaffirm our commitment to help Ukraine for as long as it takes, including through long-term financial and military support, he wrote in a letter to leaders asking them to the meeting. Residents of Kramatorsk, a city in the east of Ukraine, are still dealing with the effects of a Russian missile attack on a busy pizza place. After the deadly attack on Tuesday night, the streets of the city are filled with broken glass and other debris, as seen on video. Authorities said Wednesday that the strike killed at least 9 people, including 3 children. Rescue workers were still looking for people in the wreckage of the building. The Ukraine's Ministry of Internal Affairs said that 56 more people were hurt. After the Wagner Group tried to start a rebellion inside Russia's borders, the U.S. took steps on Tuesday to punish companies that were accused of doing business with the group. The move is thought to have nothing to do with the coup, though. Instead, it is a response to Wagner's involvement in some of the bloodiest fighting in Ukraine, where Russian forces invaded fully last year. In a statement, the Treasury Department blamed companies in Africa and the Middle East for selling gold in violation of U.S. sanctions to pay for the Wagner Group's continued operations. Individual penalties were also put on Andrei Nikolaevich Ivanov, a Wagner official, because of how he handled his money. In line with the 11th package of sanctions from the EU, Switzerland is adding more penalties against Russia. In a statement, the Swiss government said, after today's changes, Switzerland's list of sanctions for Russia's military aggression against Ukraine is the same as the EU's. The EU tightened the sanctions it already had against Russia and added new ones on June 23. 71 people and 33 corporate organizations were given limits on their finances and travel. Rescuers have pulled out another body from the rubble of a restaurant in the city of Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine. This brings the death toll from a Russian missile strike to 12. The government said that 3 of the dead were children and that another 60 people were hurt. In its latest round of sanctions against Russia, the UK has made it illegal for people and companies with ties to the Kremlin to use British lawyers. The Ministry of Justice, MOJ, said that a new law would be passed today that would make it illegal for UK lawyers to give advice to Russian companies on certain business deals. This was done to stop Moscow's war machine in Ukraine. Officials said that the punishment could make it harder for Russia to get legal advice on everything from trade deals between global companies to international money loans. According to the MOJ, Russia is very reliant on Western countries for legal knowledge. For example, the UK used to sell £56 million worth of legal services to Russian companies every year. The wager group's uprising led to the arrest of Russian General Sergei Surovikin, the Moscow Times said, citing sources from the Defense Ministry. The Defense Ministry hasn't said anything publicly about the supposed arrest of the general, who hasn't been seen in public since last Saturday, when Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin started an armed rebellion against Vladimir Putin. It wasn't okay with him. For the government. One of the people told the reporter, "I can't say anything else." A second person said that the arrest happened in connection with Prigozhin. It looks like Surovikin joined Prigozhin's side during the uprising, the person said, and now they have him in their hands. At least 11 people were killed when a Russian missile hit a popular pizza place in eastern Ukraine. Among those killed were two 14-year-old twin sisters. Another 17-year-old girl was found dead in the wreckage after Tuesday's attack in the eastern city of Kramatorsk, which turned a restaurant into bent beams. About 60 people were hurt, including an 8-month-old baby who was hit in the head. Even though an armed mutiny by the Wagner military group shook Russia over the weekend, the Kremlin is still bombing Ukraine from the air, as shown by this strike and others that happened there yesterday. The Education Department of the Kramatorsk City Council said in a Facebook post that Anna and Yulia Aksenchenko would have turned 15 in September. The post had a picture of the two girls happy for the camera. In a Telegram post, it said, "Russian missiles stopped the hearts of two angels from beating. We feel as sad as your family does, and we bow our heads in sorrow with you."